Hi, my name is Selena Garcia. I took ethnic studies and HPS from 8th grade to 12th grade, and I also was in HPS from kindergarten to 12th grade. So I went through the whole Holyoke system. Um, I was kind of like a guinea pig for the ethnic studies class, so that's why my experience is probably very different from like the people in the classes now. And now I'm at Smith College, which is like 20 minutes away, and I'm an undecided major, but it's definitely going to be related to like race and ethnicity. What is ethnic studies? To me, ethnic studies is the study of historically marginalized groups of people, and like simple terms, the study of the other, because that's what we have been defined as for a long time. And we acknowledge differences in people and the power and intersectionality.
My name is Zaiell Vargas. I am currently a Mount Holyoke student. I am a Holyoke High School alum. I took ethnic studies for 4 years. And what ethnic studies is to me is, like Selena said, the study of marginalized groups of people, but more specifically, it shifts the classroom thinking from a more Eurocentric perspective to a more broader range perspective of other identities, other cultures, all these things that we got to learn about that were not from the Eurocentric perspective.
Okay, so to describe a joyful or meaningful learning experience from one of my ethnic studies classrooms, a joyful learning experience for me was planning the ethnic studies pop out or the block party. I think it was really interesting to work with college students who like are learning the same thing that kind of we were learning in the classroom at the same time. It was kind of weird. Like, I guess we're getting this for free and like they're not. So that was interesting. Also, how we can learn from each other. So like what they were learning in their classes, they could teach to us, and what we were learning, we could teach to them. I was in the invitation committee. Well, low key wasn't fun, but like it was still interesting to like because you can still like collaborate with the other groups in the class that were planning the block party. Um, at least it was a valuable experience seeing the people and the parents that came to like acknowledge ethnic studies and like who actually wanted to see what their children were learning in schools. That was really fun, and it was also interesting to see how not like easy it is, but like it was kind of easy to get money to like have that going on. So like there's people out there who support ethnic studies and like I really appreciated that. It was pretty clever to me, honestly. Like the name just came out of nowhere. We were like, oh, let's call it the Espo and like let's get people going and let's get food and drinks and like it was just a fun collaboration, honestly. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, for me, one of my most like joyful or meaningful classroom experiences, it's so hard to pick, but I would have to say like all the times like people would tell me, well, this is just one thing in specific, but I'll go further. All the times people would tell me like, wow, I love that you're learning this now. Like I had to pay for that in college. So it's just like Selena said, the fact that we got a lot of these experiences for free was just mind boggling. But one time in specific was when we all went into the community and we went to the different community organizations and we were all just like their community building together as a class, but also helping out at the same time. I had a really powerful conversation at Nueva Esperanza. We were just learning about the services that they have there, and we were creating like what a dream Holyoke would look like, and we were like discussing like all of the injustices like with the parades and stuff that happened throughout the year, and I just really enjoyed that experience. It was really powerful for me.
Okay, so how does ethnic studies classroom feel different from a normal classroom? Ethnic studies, we do our best to step away from a Eurocentric curriculum. Essentially, everything in the U.S. is built like on white supremacy, and honestly, that cannot be reformed. So, like, as we can only do so much, honestly, right? Like, we have power within our limits, basically. So, ethnic studies kind of helps bring students' lives into the classroom because I feel like when you're in a normal quote unquote classroom, teachers expect you to just throw away like everything that just happened. Like yesterday, maybe I don't know, a lot of things do happen. Like people think it's very extreme, but like maybe someone in your family, like maybe they overdosed, maybe like you just became homeless. Like we don't know what's going on in other children's lives, and they teachers just expect you to forget about those things and come to class the next day like nothing happened. And like that's honestly not reasonable at all. And I feel like I think studies was a place for you to like not let those things behind and bring them with you. And like teachers will help you out, and your peers will help you out, and everyone sees you out. Like it's not perfect, but there's plenty of areas where like essentially ethnic studies is like kind of like a safe place for a lot of people. Like those classrooms, like even the decoration in these classrooms is helpful for some people while they're doing their work, or even just like seeing those teachers that actually value students is something very helpful for students as well.
For me, An ethnic studies class always differed from a regular class because of how I felt when I walked in the room. I always felt very welcomed. I always felt like it was very bright. It was the space that I wanted to be in versus a space that I had to be in. Um, an ethnic studies classroom was just a haven. Just being able to see all of the colorful pictures on the wall, just having a very vibrant energy in the room. I knew it was something like I was excited to learn about. So I would always be so excited going to my ethnic studies classrooms. And it felt different because it was more of a community as opposed to a school environment. All of my other classrooms were highly segregated, and it wasn't even intentional. That was just the way the students sat. And so in an ethnic studies classroom, we just sat wherever we pleased. We would all like, we didn't care. We would all just like sit wherever we wanted. And it was just, I don't know, the only word I could use to describe it would be a community.
Why do we need ethnic studies in Holyoke? Honestly, in my opinion, it's self-explanatory. Like Holyoke is predominantly Latinx, and like when you go into most of the classrooms, you don't hear anything about Latinx people, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Colombian. Like it doesn't matter. Like you literally don't hear basically anything about people who look like us. I can recall like all of middle school, and it wasn't until eighth grade that I actually learned something about Puerto Rican people coming from a Puerto Rican household. Like to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like children should be learning from like even from like 4 years old about themselves, because that is really a powerful experience, and it would just help like students have so many less traumatic experiences in classrooms and in schools. um Also, like we need a space where we don't have to code switch all the time, because when we step out to society we have to like switch our demeanor and like everything about ourselves just so we can like kind of advance and like finally work towards something that honestly like the system doesn't want us to work towards. And it's like tiring to have to filter out your life, especially in the classroom, like just walking and acting like, oh, yesterday, like kind of like how after the election a lot of teachers won't talk about what just happened. Like when Trump was elected, I did not hear one teacher in high school speak about it at all. Even now while I'm in college, a lot of my professors just acted like the election wasn't happening, and I was like, hello, like I how can you neglect what happened the last 4 years and what's going to happen in the next 4 years? Like that doesn't make sense to me. Also, like how a lot of teachers won't acknowledge, like especially during high school there was a lot of killings of Black people. I never heard that mentioned once by any of the teachers I had. And like it's honestly, it's just disappointing to have like those kind of quote unquote normal classrooms where we don't talk about it, but ethnic studies was the only place that we talked about those issues.
So for me, we need ethnic studies in Holyoke in order to limit a lot of ignorances that are ongoing in our city. And by ignorance, I mean not only by like white people in dominant culture, but I do mean within the Latinx community as well, because there are like, and it's not at the faults of the Latinx community, it's the faults of the school systems. Um, a lot of our Latinx community is well, used to be like, you know, sometimes before ethnic studies was predominantly like ignorant, I guess, or just discriminatory towards other Latinx people and just like continue that interpersonal oppression. Um, but I feel like in order to limit or just diminish those ignorances overall, Latinx people need to be educated on their culture, on Latinx history, because they don't see enough of their own representation in the classrooms. And I feel like that is what's going to help Latinx communities in particular to understand that there's more to life than what our school systems is pushing them to be. You know what I mean? Like if ethnic studies is not in Holyoke schools, then it will just continuously perpetuate the school to prison pipeline. And I feel like that stands true. Like ethnic studies is not a barrier, but like it helps to prevent the school to prison pipeline because it allows students to not only understand not understand the injustices that's going on, but it also allows them to see a future that is outside, that is beyond them, that is greater for them. So that's why I feel like we need ethnic studies.
I also wait, I have something. Okay. I think also it's not like a, because this is going in the video, it's not a us versus them conversation. It's okay like to be intersectional. Like it's okay to be Latinx and be white. It's okay to be Latinx and like you're Black. You can be anything. You can be Asian. It doesn't matter basically about your race. It just matters what you do with what you have. So like if you're white and Latinx, you have that privilege to like kind of like if you're white and Latinx, you have white privilege, and like you can use that to benefit your other Latinx people who are brown, black, Native American, indigenous. It doesn't matter. Like it's kind of all about what we learn and what we do with that, honestly. Like it isn't like I know a lot of times when we speak to school officials and stuff, they'd be like, "Oh, white people, this and that." Like you guys talk about white people, like no, that's not literally it. Like I'm not trying to focus on white people. I'm trying to focus on myself and how white people are the ones that need to like kind of help me because it's their problem. Like they're the one that created it in the first place, I guess. So like essentially that's it. How has ethnic studies helped me after graduation? Ethnic studies has helped me because I feel kind of smart in college actually because I mean, I go to Smith and like that's mostly like a liberal school and like I guess a lot of folks already know a lot of the stuff that I know too, which is kind of interesting to see because like in like high school that wasn't the case. But I guess it's interesting to see how other people learned what they learned and how I learned what I did. So like ethnic studies was not something in other people's schools. Like they had to like go out and learn on their own, or like they had like a kind of an awakening and they were like, oh, like I need to be like a better person. But I guess it was interesting to see that we learned this in the school, which is like very different, obviously, because we kind of get like resources and access to things that other people don't have access to. Um, but it also helped me figure out like how to think critically and like analyze things from multiple perspectives and basically like criticize everything that should be criticized, which is everything. And it also has given me a lot of connections. So like I guess kind of staying at Smith was a blessing because I am still nearby. And like if I imagine I wanted an internship or something, or like I don't know anything. I could just be like, oh, like Dana, do you know someone that can like help me do this? Or like I know a lot of these people from Teach Western Mass, or like I know a lot of educators in Western Mass area, or even like in Boston. And I think it's very helpful with getting connections, especially in the field that I want to go into.
Yeah, for me, ethnic studies has definitely helped me after graduation because one, I feel like it helped me like figure out where I want to go in terms of like my major. Right now I'm like focusing on sociology and political science, but I think I want to like extend that knowledge to like anthropology. Um but in terms of like how I interact in the classroom, I feel like I was definitely more advanced than some of my other classmates, I guess. Because like I took a 200 level Latinx studies course and I was the only freshman in there. And everybody was just amazed that I was a freshman because of how well I could speak and how well I like about the subjects that we were learning and how much I already knew. And that didn't surprise me because I was prepared for it, but I was just glad that coming into these classes, I had the knowledge that I already knew. I had the language that I needed. And all of these things just prepared me for college. Whereas, when I was in high school, there were college students telling me, oh, wow, like I learned that in college. Like you're so lucky, you know what I mean? And I guess ethnic studies has helped me to have like real world conversations. Like even with my family, just like, especially after graduation, like all of the things that happened, all of the killings of like innocent black people, like it just helped me to have those conversations with some of the people that I care about, and it helped me like be confident in what it was that I needed to say.
Okay, what would a world look like that valued and followed the aspects of ethnic studies? In my opinion, I think there would be more teachers of color and teachers that are experienced in teaching ethnic studies. Because, like, of course, I guess anyone can kind of learn ethnic studies or do it, but you have to have that foundation, honestly. Like, you need to have had academia or academic experience in it. Although sometimes it doesn't, like, you don't need that. Like, sometimes you are the experience. Like a lot of people be like, oh, you need to like read theory, a lot of this and that. It's like the theory is based on my experiences. So like why should I have to like go read some like expensive book? But you know what I mean? Like you need to have some certification in that area. But I believe society that was that way kind of we need to be culturally sensitive and culturally aware. Like it's not even about like certain things, I guess. Like it's as simple as like kind of like we shouldn't be individualistic. We should care about our neighbor and like especially now with COVID, like when you go outside into the world today, like you need to be aware that there are people dying and like whatever you do can affect other people. Like if you wear your mask, okay, but like make sure you're staying 6 feet away. If you're gonna go outside and like do things that you probably shouldn't be doing in a pandemic, make sure you're getting tested. Like it shouldn't be like we're only caring about ourselves. There are also other people that we should care about. And I guess that's kind of the value of ethnic studies. Like you're not you're an individual in society, but also what you do affects other people. And I believe that that is something important.
For me, a world that followed and upheld the values of ethnic studies would definitely be different. But I guess I'll start within a school at first. Students, I feel like, would definitely want to go to school. They'll, want to be learning because they see themselves, like more students are seeing themselves represented, and more other students are like understanding like different perspectives instead of one Eurocentric perspective. But I like how Selena put it, like, the world would be less individualistic, more like community based, or just like entirely focused. And I really like that idea because she's right. Like, ethnic studies upholds the values of just everybody who's not, in terms of like, who's not like Eurocentric, I guess, who are not from the Eurocentric perspective, even though like it's still incorporated in there. But I feel like in terms of the world, like if we had a world that did uphold these ethnic studies values and follow the values, our world would be more community based, and our world would be a little bit more empathetic towards people, like understanding that, the world doesn't revolve around one certain group of people. The world is, so diverse. There's so many things that, go on in the world. And especially through ethnic studies, I just feel like the world would be way more empathetic than it is now.